I was still trying to figure out how to hold a plastic spoon with my right hand when my son posted a photo from the Maldives. He was standing in front of water so blue it didn't look real, sunglasses on, drink in his hand. The caption said, "Finally living the life I deserve." He tagged me. I was in a hospital bed in Naperville, Illinois, 2 days after a stroke. I'm 58 years old. I've worked at Midwest Fidelity Insurance Group in downtown Chicago for 27 years. I know how risk works. I know how exposure works. I've spent most of my adult life calculating what could go wrong. What I never calculated was this. 3 weeks earlier, I had booked the Maldives trip myself, round-trip business class, overwater villa, the kind of place you only see in travel magazines at the dentist's office. I told myself it was a celebration. I was 5 years from retirement. My 401k was healthy. My IRA was steady. For once, I wasn't cleaning up anyone else's mess. My son Ryan had insisted we upgrade the room. "Mom, if we're going to do this, let's actually do it," he said. "We're not poor." Ryan is 32. He's smart. He's also been almost successful for about 10 years. 2 marketing startups that didn't make it past year 2, a freelance consulting phase that mostly involved him redesigning his own website, a few contracts that fell through because according to him the clients didn't understand the vision. I've paid off $18,000 in credit card debt for him. I co-signed a business loan in 2021 that I ended up helping refinance. I covered 9 months of rent when one of his ventures collapsed. Every time he promised it was temporary. He just needs a little stability, I used to tell people, including my husband Daniel. Daniel teaches high school history. He's a good man, calm, non-confrontational. His favorite phrase is he'll figure it out. That's easy to say when you're not the one wiring money. The morning of my stroke started like any other Tuesday. I was answering emails before 7 a.m. We were in the middle of a compliance review at work. Deadlines, calls, the usual pressure. I stood up from the kitchen table and felt my right arm go numb. My coffee mug slipped out of my hand. When I tried to say Daniel's name, it came out wrong. Thick, slow. He drove me to Edward Hospital in under 10 minutes. CT scan, blood work. A neurologist explaining that I had an ischemic stroke. They gave me TPA within the safe window. I remember signing forms with my left hand because my right one wouldn't cooperate. The doctor said I was lucky. I had movement, I had speech, even if it was slow. They said rehab would take time. Ryan came to see me the next day. He looked concerned. He hugged me carefully, like I was fragile glass. "Mom, you need to focus on getting better," he said. "Don't worry about bills or anything. I'll handle it." He brought paperwork, a durable power of attorney. He said it would let him manage my accounts while I recovered. I couldn't log into my bank from the hospital anyway. He had already arranged for a mobile notary to come by. 2 witnesses, everything done properly. I was fully alert, no one pressured me. I signed. I thought I was being responsible. 72 hours later, my bank called about large transfers from my savings account. $12,480 moved out. Credit card balances paid off. Travel charges processed. That same afternoon, Ryan boarded a flight to the Maldives. And now I was staring at his photo from a hospital bed, my right hand shaking while I tried to scroll. He texted me a few minutes after posting. "Mom, don't stress. The trip was non-refundable. You rest up. I've got everything covered." I looked around the room, IV line, monitor, rehab schedule taped to the wall. I had spent years making sure Ryan landed on his feet. Turns out he had learned how to take off just fine. I set my phone face down on the hospital tray and stared at the ceiling tiles, trying to steady my breathing before my blood pressure monitor started beeping again. It wasn't the money that hit me first. It was how normal this felt. That was the part I couldn't ignore. Ryan using my account wasn't new. The amounts were bigger this time and the timing was cruel, but the pattern that had been building for years, I just kept calling it something else. Support, temporary help, a bridge. 10 years ago, when Ryan graduated with his marketing degree from DePaul, he had a job offer lined up. Entry level, nothing glamorous. He lasted 8 months. "They don't think big," he told me over dinner. "I'm not meant to work for people who play small." I admired the confidence. I wired him $3,000 so he could build something real. That was Startup 1. There were logo drafts, a website, late nights, big promises. By year 2, the business account was empty, and the credit cards were not. $18,000 in balances across 3 cards, minimum payments he couldn't keep up with. I refinanced part of my home equity line and paid it off. I told Daniel it was a consolidation strategy. I told Ryan it was a one-time reset. "It won't happen again, Mom," he said. "I just needed breathing room." He always needed breathing room. Startup 2 came in 2021. This time he was more cautious, at least on paper. He asked me to co-sign a small business loan. $25,000. He said investors were close. He just needed proof of backing. I remember sitting at the bank signing my name as guarantor. The loan officer asked if I understood the risk. I smiled. I work in compliance. Of course I understand risk. What I didn't understand was emotional leverage. When the business folded 18 months later, I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I asked what the payment schedule looked like and quietly covered the shortfall until he could regroup. Then there was the rent. 9 months in a 1-bedroom apartment in Logan Square. $2,000 a month. Just until the next contract comes through, he said. Daniel had opinions by then. He's 30, Daniel told me one night in the kitchen. At some point, he needs to feel pressure. He does feel pressure, I shot back. He just doesn't show it like you think he should. Daniel leaned against the counter and sighed. Or maybe he doesn't show it because he knows you'll absorb it. I didn't like that sentence. I told myself Ryan's generation had it harder. Student loans, housing costs, a different economy. I used phrases like launch delays and non-linear careers when my friends asked how he was doing. I defended him even when he wasn't in the room. Looking back from that hospital bed, I could see the math clearly. Every bailout lowered the stakes. Every rescue removed consequence. I had built a safety net so wide he never felt the ground. And then came the Maldives. It was supposed to be simple. 1 trip before I shifted into retirement planning mode. I had run the numbers. Flights, villa, insurance. It fit within discretionary spending without touching my 401k or IRA. Ryan saw the booking confirmation on my laptop. "Wait, that's the basic villa," he said. "Mom, if we're flying that far, let's not cheap out." I almost laughed at the word cheap. The upgrade was another $7,000. Overwater bungalow, private plunge pool, the kind of place that makes you feel like you've made it. "You only live once," he said. "We deserve it." We? That word did more work than I realized at the time. When I transferred the upgrade payment, I felt proud. I felt generous. I felt like I was finally giving my son an experience instead of a rescue. 3 weeks later, I was learning how to flex my fingers again while he was boarding a plane. The nurse came in to check my vitals and I asked for my phone back. My speech was still slow but clear enough. I opened my banking app. The withdrawals were real, time-stamped, authorized under my own signature. Legally clean, morally something else. Ryan texted again while I was scrolling. "Mom, seriously, don't stress. I'll handle everything while you recover. Focus on rehab." Handle everything. I thought about the loan, the rent, the credit cards, the villa upgrade. Handling everything had always meant me. I locked my phone and set it aside. My right hand still trembled when I tried to grip anything for more than a few seconds, but my mind felt sharper than it had in years. For the first time, I wasn't calculating how to fix this. I was calculating how to stop. I asked the nurse to help me sit up straighter before Ryan came back into the room with a folder tucked under his arm. He had that focused look he gets when he thinks he's being productive. Not nervous, not guilty, just efficient. "Mom, I printed everything out," he said, pulling a chair close to the bed. "You don't need to worry about bills while you're here. I'll take care of it." The neurologist had already told me I was lucky. Mild ischemic stroke. We caught it fast. No surgery, no permanent paralysis expected if I committed to rehab. My speech was slower than usual, but my thinking was intact. They'd evaluated that carefully. I knew exactly what I was signing. Ryan opened the folder and placed the document on the rolling tray table. "Durable power of attorney," he said. "It just lets me manage your accounts temporarily. Insurance, mortgage utilities, basic stuff." I read the heading slowly. My right hand rested uselessly in my lap, so I used my left to steady the pages. The language was standard. Authority over financial accounts, access to banking, the ability to transfer funds. "Temporary?" I asked. "Well, it stays active unless you revoke it," he said. "But we can change it any time." A mobile notary arrived 20 minutes later, a middle-aged woman with a clipboard and a calm voice. 2 hospital staff members signed as witnesses. The notary checked my ID, asked if I understood what I was signing, and confirmed that no one was pressuring me. "I understand," I said clearly. And I did. I signed with my left hand. My name looked unfamiliar, slightly crooked. Ryan thanked the notary and walked her out. When he came back, he kissed my forehead. "You focus on walking again," he said. "I'll handle everything." The first 2 days were quiet. Rehab sessions, speech exercises, learning how to hold a pen without dropping it. Daniel visited in the evenings bringing clothes and updating me on the house. "Ryan left this morning," he said, on the second night. Flights were already booked. I looked at him. "You knew." He shifted his weight. "The trip wasn't refundable, Maggie. He said you'd want him to go." I didn't answer. My blood pressure monitor filled the silence with a steady beep. On the third day, my phone rang while I was practicing grip exercises with a foam ball. "Mrs. Lawson, this is First National Bank. We're calling to verify a series of large transactions from your savings account." I asked the therapist to step out for a moment. "What transactions?" I said. The representative listed them one by one. $12,480 transferred out of savings into checking. 3 credit card balances paid in full, an international airline charge, a resort services pre-authorization. "All authorized under valid credentials," she added. "We just flagged it due to volume." I closed my eyes for a second. "Yes," I said slowly. "It's authorized." It was. When I hung up, I opened the banking app myself. The timestamps were clear, executed through online access, nothing fraudulent, no identity theft, just a son with legal authority. I did the math automatically. After the transfers, my emergency fund had dropped below the threshold I'd always kept. Not dangerously low, but lower than I liked. That evening, I checked Instagram again. Ryan posted another photo, this one from a seaplane. The water below looked unreal, like a travel ad. His caption read, "Sometimes you just have to take the leap." The comments were full of congratulations. I stared at the date and time, same day as the transfers. My phone buzzed a few minutes later. "Mom, I handled the credit cards. Figured it's cleaner that way. I'll sort the rest when I'm back." "Cleaner?" I typed back slowly. "Did you discuss that with me?" A few minutes passed. "I have POA, Mom. It's fine. You need to focus on rehab, not finances." That sentence landed differently than he probably intended. "I have POA. Not I'll help. Not let's review. Just authority." The next morning, the hospital social worker stopped by to review discharge planning. She asked if I had someone managing my finances while I was admitted. "My son," I said. She nodded. "That's good. Just make sure you're comfortable with the arrangement." Comfortable. I thought about the notary, the witnesses, my signature, the bank confirmation. Everything had been done properly. I wasn't confused. I wasn't coerced. I wasn't legally incompetent. I had given him the keys. And now he was driving somewhere I couldn't follow. I asked the hospital social worker if she could bring me a list of estate attorneys in DuPage County. She didn't look surprised. Her name was Karen, late 40s, practical. The kind of person who has seen every version of family tension that can happen in a hospital room. "Are you concerned about how your power of attorney is being used?" she asked gently. "I'm concerned about how comfortable he is using it," I said. Karen nodded once. No judgment, no dramatics, just professional acknowledgement. By that afternoon, I had a consultation scheduled with Thomas Green, an estate and probate attorney based in downtown Chicago. He agreed to speak by a video call while I was still admitted. When his face appeared on the screen, he didn't waste time. "Mrs. Lawson, I understand you executed a durable power of attorney while hospitalized," he said. "Are you currently mentally competent and making this call voluntarily?" "Yes," I said. "Very much so." "Good. Let's clarify something first. Has your son exceeded the authority granted?" I explained the transfers, the credit cards, the travel charges. Thomas listened carefully. "Based on what you're describing," he said, "he's acting within the authority of the document. A standard durable power of attorney allows broad financial discretion." "So he hasn't done anything illegal," I said. "Not from what you've told me." That part didn't sting as much as I expected. "What are my options?" I asked. "You can revoke the power of attorney immediately," he said. "You're competent, that's your right. We would draft a formal revocation, notify the banks, and restrict further access." I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger, not panic, just clarity. "What about my will?" I asked. He paused slightly. "Has something changed in your estate intentions?" "Yes," I said. "My assumptions." Thomas didn't smile, but his expression softened. "Let's handle one instrument at a time," he said. "First, we revoke the POA. Then we discuss broader planning, including a possible revocable living trust if asset protection is a concern." Asset protection. That phrase landed clean. The next morning, Thomas emailed the revocation document to the hospital. Karen coordinated printing and witnessing. I signed with my left hand again. My signature was steadier this time. Thomas sent formal notice to First National Bank and my investment custodian. By end of business day, Ryan's access was terminated. He found out quickly. My phone buzzed during physical therapy. "Why can't I access your accounts?" he texted. I didn't answer immediately. I finished the set of assisted leg raises. I focused on breathing. Then I typed back, "I've revoked the power of attorney." 3 dots appeared almost instantly. "What, why?" "Because I didn't authorize you to use my recovery as a financial cleanup window." He called within seconds. "Mom, I paid off debt." "That helps both of us," he said. I could hear airport noise in the background. Laughter, announcements. "It helps you," I said. "I was going to talk to you about it." "You didn't." Silence for half a beat. "I have responsibilities too," he said. "You're acting like I robbed you." "You didn't rob me," I replied evenly. "You just made decisions you weren't asked to make." His tone shifted. "This is stress talking. You just had a stroke." "No," I said. "This is the first calm conversation I've had in weeks." He exhaled sharply. "So what now, you don't trust me?" That question felt almost sincere. "I trusted you enough to give you legal authority," I said. "That's not the issue." "What is the issue then?" "The issue," I said slowly, "is that you saw access and thought opportunity." There was a long pause. "You're overthinking this," he said finally. "I'll be back in a few days. We'll figure it out." Figure it out. I ended the call without raising my voice. That afternoon, Thomas called to confirm the bank had processed the revocation. No further transactions could occur without my direct authorization. "You've taken back control," he said. "Now we discuss structure." Structure. For years, my financial planning had revolved around growth, retirement projections, tax efficiency, long-term allocation. Now it was about boundaries. I asked Thomas a direct question. "If something happened to me tomorrow," I said, "would my son inherit everything without conditions?" "Yes," he said. "Under your current will, assets transfer outright. No trust, no staged distribution." I closed my eyes briefly. "Outright. No guardrails, no accountability, just access." "Then we need to change that," I said. Not to punish him. To correct a design flaw I had ignored for too long, I asked the discharge nurse to bring me the printed summary of my insurance coverage before I signed anything else. If I was restructuring my estate, I needed to understand exactly what recovery was going to cost me. Rehab wasn't cheap. My insurance covered a significant portion, but there were copays, therapy caps, follow-up imaging medications. I had always planned carefully for retirement. Now I was watching those projections adjust in real time. Thomas came back the following week with final drafts of the revocable living trust. "Let's go through asset alignment," he said, spreading out documents across the tray table. We reviewed everything. My brokerage account would transfer into the trust immediately. The house would be retitled under the trust once I was discharged. My 401k and IRA would remain outside the trust but listed as contingent beneficiary. Primary control stayed with me while I was alive. "This structure protects against probate delays," Thomas explained. "It also creates distribution controls." Control, that word kept resurfacing. Not over Ryan, over exposure. We discussed retirement projections next. "Given your age," he said, "preserving liquidity matters. You don't want to jeopardize long-term stability." "I won't," I said. "That's the point." I had worked too many years to let one emotional decision destabilize my future. That afternoon, Ryan texted again. "So you're really doing this trust thing?" "Yes." "Dad says you're overreacting." I paused before responding. Daniel had visited less frequently since the revocation. He wasn't angry. He was uncomfortable. Conflict was never his specialty. I typed back, "Your father and I have different definitions of overreacting." A few minutes later, my phone rang. "Mom, I don't understand why you're making this so complicated," Ryan said. "It's just money." That sentence almost made me laugh. "It's retirement," I said. "It's security, it's medical coverage, it's the house you grew up in." "You think I'd take that from you?" "You already did," I replied calmly. "You just didn't see it that way." "That was temporary." "So is my patience." He went quiet. "You don't trust me," he said. "I trust patterns," I answered. There was a long silence on his end. "I thought this trip was something good," he said finally. "Something we deserved." "I booked that trip," I reminded him, "not you. You wanted us to enjoy it. I wanted to share it, not subsidize Independence Theater." He didn't respond to that. When we hung up, I realized something uncomfortable. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had fueled the first few days. Now it was something steadier. Recalibration. 2 weeks later, I was discharged to outpatient rehab. Daniel drove me home. The house looked the same. The mailbox was full, the grass slightly overgrown. Inside, nothing had moved. That felt strange. Ryan returned from the Maldives the following day. He walked in carrying a tan and a defensive posture. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Functional," I said. He sat at the kitchen table, the same place where I had dropped my coffee mug the morning of my stroke. "So what exactly did you change?" he asked. "My estate structure." "That sounds dramatic." "It's accounting," I replied. Daniel stood by the sink quiet. Ryan leaned back in his chair. "So I'm on probation now." "You're on conditions," I said. "Like anyone managing risk." "I'm your son." "Yes. And that's supposed to come with what unlimited access." He ran a hand through his hair. "I was going to pay you back," he said again. "With what income?" I asked. He didn't answer. The silence stretched, but it wasn't explosive. It was factual. "I need to know something," I said finally. "If I hadn't had the stroke, would you have told me about the transfers before or after the trip?" He opened his mouth, closed it. "That's not fair." "It's precise," I replied. Daniel shifted uncomfortably but didn't intervene. Ryan stood up. "I can't believe this is happening over a vacation." "It's not about the vacation," I said. "It's about trajectory." He looked at me like I'd switched languages. "Trajectory?" "Yes, yours and mine." He shook his head. "You've changed." I didn't deny it. Because I had. Not emotionally, structurally. And structure, once reinforced, doesn't collapse easily. I listed the house 8 months after my stroke, not because I had to, but because I chose to. Naperville property taxes aren't sentimental. Neither is square footage you don't need. The 4-bedroom colonial made sense when Ryan was a teenager and Daniel and I were both mid-career. It didn't make sense anymore. The realtor walked through the house with a clipboard. "You've kept it in great condition," she said. I smiled. Maintenance has always been my strength. Ryan found out when the for sale sign went up. "You're selling?" he asked, standing in the driveway like I had just announced we were moving to Mars. "Yes!" "Why?" "Because I don't need this much space, and I don't need this much overhead." "You're downsizing because of me," he said. "I'm downsizing because of math," I replied. The house sold in 6 weeks. We didn't get peak market numbers, but we got fair value. After closing costs and the mortgage payoff, the proceeds went directly into conservative investment allocations inside the trust framework. I purchased a 2-bedroom condo in Evanston. Smaller, efficient, walking distance to the lake, lower taxes, elevator access, which rehab had taught me to appreciate. Daniel and I had already filed for legal separation by then. That conversation was quieter than the one about the trust. "I didn't think it would go this far," he said one night sitting at the kitchen table. "It didn't go far," I said. "It got clear. You're making everything transactional." "I'm making everything accountable." He didn't fight me on the separation. We structured it without drama. Asset division aligned with the trust. Retirement accounts remained untouched. No courtroom scenes, just paperwork and signatures. Ryan's adjustment was less smooth. His leased SUV disappeared first. Voluntary return, he told me. Then came the full-time job at a small marketing agency in Schaumburg. Not glamorous, stable. "I'm building something steady," he said during one of our more civil conversations. "That's good," I replied. He waited for praise. I didn't give it. Not out of cruelty, out of consistency. A few months into the job, he showed up at my condo without announcing it first. I opened the door using my right hand without thinking about it. "Progress." He stepped inside, looked around. "This is different," he said. "It's efficient." He walked toward the balcony, stared out at Lake Michigan. "I didn't think you'd actually cut me off," he said. "I didn't cut you off," I replied. "I stopped underwriting you." "That sounds harsh." "It sounds accurate." He turned around. "I'm working," he said. "Full-time, benefits and everything." "I know." "You don't sound impressed." "I'm relieved," I said. He frowned slightly. "Relieved. Yes, it means you're capable." He didn't respond right away. "I paid off one of my cards," he added almost defensively. "That's good." "You don't want to know how?" "I assume with income," I said evenly. He exhaled. "You're different now. I'm consistent now." He sat down at the small dining table. "Do you ever think maybe you overcorrected?" he asked. "Do you ever think maybe I undercorrected for 10 years?" I replied. That landed. He leaned back in the chair. "I never meant to take advantage of you." "I believe that," I said. "But you did." He looked down at his hands. "I thought you'd always be there." "I am here," I said, just not as a line of credit. Silence settled between us. Not hostile, just uncomfortable. "Dad says you're happier," he said. "I'm calmer." "That's not the same thing." "It's close enough." He stood up after a few minutes. So what now? He asked. Now you keep working, I said, and I keep recovering. He nodded once. I didn't think you'd actually change the will, he added quietly. I didn't change it to punish you, I said. I changed it to protect me. He studied my face like he was trying to measure whether that was permanent. It was. After he left, I reviewed my monthly budget at the kitchen counter. Condo association fees, utilities, insurance, rehab copays decreasing as sessions tapered down. The numbers balanced. For the first time in years, my financial planning wasn't built around anticipating someone else's shortfall. It was built around sustainability. Ryan had a job, Daniel had an apartment, I had stability. No dramatic speeches, no grand reconciliation, just new parameters. And parameters, once established, tend to hold. I stand at the balcony most mornings with a cup of coffee in my left hand and the railing steady under my right. Lake Michigan doesn't care about my stroke, it doesn't care about my son or the trust or the house I sold. It moves the same way every day. That steadiness has become oddly comforting. A year ago, I measured my life by what I could prevent. Missed payments, failed ventures, emotional fallout. I was always calculating how to soften the landing for someone else. The stroke interrupted that. Not dramatically, not in a movie scene way. It interrupted it clinically. One arm numb, speech slowed. Hospital wristband on, forms to sign. And in that hospital room, something else slowed down too. The reflex to fix. When I rewrote my will, people assumed it was anger. It wasn't. Anger burns fast. This was structural. For years, I confused access with love. If Ryan needed money, I gave it. If he needed backing, I signed. If he needed reassurance, I supplied it. I told myself I was investing in his future. What I was really doing was buffering him from consequence. There's a difference between support and substitution. I learned that too late to avoid the pattern, but early enough to stop it. Ryan still works at the agency in Schaumburg. He's been there over a year now, full-time, health insurance, a modest 401k match. He complains less about vision and more about deadlines. That's progress. We have dinner sometimes, not every week, not out of obligation, just occasionally. He doesn't ask about the trust anymore. He did once months back. So if I keep working, he said carefully, the conditions eventually clear. Yes, I said. And if I don't, then the funds move elsewhere. He nodded like someone reading terms and conditions for the first time in his life. I used to think you didn't trust me, he said. I trust behavior, I replied, not promises. He didn't argue with that. Daniel and I finalized the legal separation quietly. No court theatrics, just signatures and adjusted accounts. We speak politely. We've both stepped into lives that require less negotiation. People sometimes ask if I regret going so far. I don't. The truth is the will wasn't about money, it was about definition. Before the stroke, motherhood meant availability. If my son stumbled, I reached out before he hit the ground. After the stroke, motherhood meant something narrower. It meant believing he could stand, even if standing took longer without me holding him up. There's an uncomfortable realization that comes with that shift. He might have stood sooner if I hadn't kept cushioning the fall. That thought isn't self-punishment, it's inventory. The Stroke Recovery Foundation sends quarterly reports now, grants awarded, therapy sessions funded, equipment purchased, real people regaining function. The Elder Financial Abuse Initiative has hosted workshops in 3 counties already. Most of the attendees are parents in their 50s and 60s. They ask questions that sound familiar. How do I help without enabling? What if my child sees boundaries as rejection? What if I've already gone too far? I don't give speeches. I tell them what I did. I explain the difference between legality and loyalty, between entitlement and access, between love and liability. My right hand still tightens in the morning before it loosens up. I still move slower on stairs than I used to. Rehab didn't make me younger. It made me aware. Awareness is less dramatic than recovery montages. It's quieter, more permanent. After my stroke, my son flew to the Maldives. People hear that sentence and expect the story to be about revenge. It isn't. He didn't break into my accounts. I handed him authority. He didn't steal my future. I structured it without guardrails. In the hospital, I rewrote my will. That line sounds like retaliation. It wasn't. It was revision. I didn't remove him from my life. I removed automatic rescue from the equation. I didn't rewrite my will to punish my son. I rewrote it to protect the woman who worked 27 years, paid off 2 mortgages, survived a stroke, and finally understood that stability isn't something you give away in the name of love. Motherhood doesn't require self-erasure. Sometimes it requires restraint, and restraint, I've learned, is a form of care too. I didn't plan to become the kind of woman who rewrites her will from a hospital bed. I planned to retire quietly. I planned to help my son just a little longer. I planned to keep smoothing things over the way I always had. The stroke interrupted those plans, not with drama, with clarity. After my stroke, my son flew to the Maldives. That part still surprises people when they hear it. They expect shouting, police reports, court battles. They expect a classic revenge story. But this wasn't about revenge in the way people imagine it. It was about structure. Family betrayal doesn't always look like crime. Sometimes it looks like convenience. Sometimes it looks like a child who assumes you'll always catch the bill. Sometimes it looks like a parent who keeps saying yes because no feels too harsh. Rewriting my will wasn't punishment, it was protection. I learned something uncomfortable. Love without boundaries turns into liability. And rescuing someone over and over doesn't make them stronger, it makes them dependent on the rescue. If you're in your 50s or 60s, thinking about retirement, thinking about your kids, thinking about what you've built, protect it. Not because you don't love your family, but because stability is not selfish. Set clear expectations. Put it in writing. Understand your power of attorney. Review your beneficiaries. Have the hard conversation before a crisis forces you to. I didn't lose my son. I changed the terms of our relationship. He works now. He pays his own bills. We speak honestly. There's less illusion and more reality between us. That's not a tragedy. That's adulthood. If you watch family revenge stories or family drama and think they're exaggerated, I can tell you this real life is quieter, but it cuts deeper. The paperwork hurts more than the shouting. The silence after a boundary is often louder than any argument. My advice is simple. Don't wait for a health scare to get serious about your financial structure. Don't confuse support with substitution. And don't believe that protecting yourself makes you a bad parent. Sometimes the most powerful move in any family drama isn't revenge. It's restraint. If this story made you think about your own situation or someone you know, subscribe to the channel. We share real family revenge stories and life lessons that are uncomfortable, honest, and grounded in reality. Because sometimes the biggest turning points don't happen in courtrooms or on beaches in the Maldives. They happen in hospital rooms when you finally decide who gets access to your life and who doesn't.